Hello, everybody. All right. Oh, there we go. I tried to mute the YouTube screen there, but it didn't mute quite quickly, so I had to wait a little longer there. Anyways, well, today is Wednesday, August the 6th, 2025. Means it's, of course, this week's hump day. Hopefully, everybody's had a good week thus far. Getting and ready to get over the hump, get to the latter half of the week. Of course, we've got three. We got three articles we're going to go over tonight. I'm going to give people a chance to come in before we get started. Um, a friendly reminder to everybody, of course, if you guys haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Let me see here. Alrighty then. Alright, let's see. Okay, so now we're coming up on 3 minutes, or we're at 2.5 minutes here. So, um, again, a friendly reminder to everybody: if you guys haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Now, with that being said, so tonight we got three articles we're going to go over, all from Bounding into Comics, including the first one will be apparently there's a survey out there that says women view anime, comic books, and Magic the Gathering among the least attractive male hobbies. But according to at least this one writer from Bounding into Comics, it's complete baloney. Then we also will be covering voice actor Ray Porter, who played Darkseid in Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I guess he'll be playing another role that they're going to talk about here. And apparently, Saban and Hasbro wanted Power Rangers to ignore Super Sentai. So we'll get into all that. Plus, of course, we'll get caught up on all the latest in terms of the wrestling wrap up. Look back to last night's NXT. Look ahead to tonight's AEW, as of course AEW continues to march towards Forbidden Door in about another 18 days here, so about 2.5 weeks, and then we'll wrap things up with this day in each history. So why don't we go ahead and get started? On. I'll get started with the first article here. Hmm. And again, a friendly reminder: if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. So if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So as we now get into this here. So survey claims women view anime, comic books, and Magic the Gathering among, in quotes here, the least attractive male hobbies, unquote. But it's complete. Well, we'll use the term baloney. They obviously use a different term there. But article by Spencer McCauley, published back on August 4th, which was, of course, a couple days ago, this past Monday. So let's see what Spencer's got to say about this. So over the last few days, readers who happen to peruse any given social media platform may have caught wind of a specific survey whose results reinforce the absolutely tired stereotype that straight women look down upon any and all potential romantic partners who participate in, smaller quotes, nerdy hobbies like comic books, anime, or even Magic the Gathering. However, as happens to be the case with most headlines that attempt to shame people for simply engaging with a harmless hobby that has been deemed childish or immature by insecure and self hating older generations, said study is 100% full of garbage. In the immortal words of Homer Simpson, quote, people can come up with statistics to prove anything, unquote. Hmm. Let's see. See if anybody say anything yet. Oh, all right. Despite its coming to popular attention, thanks to its sharing by the anime news centric Twitter account Anime Updates, the survey in question is actually about a year old, having been conducted in summer of 2024 by the website Date Psychology, which rather than any sort of accredited research or news outlet is actually a now seemingly defunct independent blog run solely by one individual, a purported behavioral and cognitive neuroscience graduate student at an unidentified university known only by his full first name of Alexander. I wonder, with a name like Alexander, I wonder if he thinks that he's great or something like that, and has some kind of megalomaniacal tendencies. In seeking to collect the relative data, Alexander divided respondents along male-female gender lines and presented each of them with a quote a forced choice survey of 74 male hobbies, unquote, with women being invited to, in quotes, to choose if the hobby was, small quote, unattractive for a man to do or attractive for a man to do, unquote. And men, conversely, quote, asked to indicate if they thought women believed a given hobby was unattractive, unquote. Now, I guess this is a statistic here. Top 15 least attractive hobbies to women, at least according to this one guy, Alexander. Comic books, cosplay. I know the cosplay one is total baloney because even when I went to with a lot of you tend to see more women in cosplay than men, so I don't see debating, drinking, MTG. I wonder what MTG is supposed to stand for. Anime, makeup, crypto, cigars, um, clubbing, marijuana, Funko, arguing online, porn, gambling, uh, manosphere. Okay. To this end, the survey found that there was a, quote, strong congruence in the bottom choices for men and women with such unpopular hobbies, including including in parentheses here, from most favorably looked upon to least, comic books, Magic the Gathering. So that's what MTG stands for, Magic the Gathering. Okay. And anime, with porn, gambling, and engagement with manosphere content coming in the very bottom. Quote, a good way to understand the most unattractive hobbies to women, they look mostly like a collection of vices and vices, niche nerd hobbies, antisocial behavior, argued Alexander. Unattractiveness of male nerd hobbies. Let's see. Reading, building models, stamps, D&D, magic tricks, arcade games, wargaming, video games, comic books, cosplay, Magic the Gathering, anime, Funko, okay. Following a further breakdown of the positive outlook women had towards other activities like archery, blacksmithing, and playing an instrument, Alexander ultimately concluded that, quote, consistently across these results, women mostly don't like hobbies that are vices and antisocial behaviors. Women do like hobbies that showcase physical and practical skills, humor, and intelligence. Hey, Bone. Long time no see. Thanks for popping in. Nice to see you. Quote, one thing to keep in mind is that some hobbies will put you into contact with women in ways others will not, unquote, the grad student advised his male readers. In conclusion to his report, quote, for example, video games, in addition to not being highly esteemed by women, also mean that you won't be in live social groups with women. Dancing, on the other hand, is a hobby that will put you in contact with many women. You may want to consider the potential sex ratios when selecting hobbies. If a secondary goal is to meet opposite sex friends or potential romantic partners, unquote. On its face, the claim that over 65% of women and all of a sudden are all of a sudden romantically put off by men engaging in smaller quotes nerdy hobbies is understandably quite worrying, particularly as it would mean that the recent gains made in mainstream understanding towards things like video games or comic books were nothing more than a marketing narrative pushed by corporations at the expense of the ever worsening worldwide, in smaller quote, relationship recession. Yet, while Alexander's findings make for good pull quotes and headlines, these bombastic excerpts do not tell the full story of his smaller quotes research. Aside from how such a, in smaller quotes, fact would run counter to the endless real world examples of both women who have fallen in love with with a man of his genuine passion for his nerd interests and who partake in such hobbies themselves. Of course, we know a friend of the channel here who found romance that way. Some of you know R.J. Carter. He and his his now wife Carrie, discovered each other through the Comic Con convention. Um, we know and I'm sure many of you, and I know of a few other couples, comic book couples, likewise. Hmm. So who partake in such hobbies. See, Alexander fails to offer any specific clarification toward his methodology until the very last paragraph of his write up. It is therein that he buries the rather important detail that rather than any sort of majority population or actual random sampling, his information was instead gleaned from from quote a convenient sample of 814 participants, 48% female, which quote skewed disproportionately toward women of high social status, high level of education, 45%, had a master's degree in the previous survey, and who are predominantly white, larger than 90%. Yeah, that's not a good sample. That's not really a good random sample right there. This means that rather than a truly random representation of any majority population, such as women in the US, women in the West, or women in general, Alexander's claims are based on the response of 391 white women from within date psychology's orbit. Their demographics, ostensibly including the site's readers, Patreon subscribers, and people inside his own immediate social circles. Yeah, that's a pretty limited sample right there. Thus, instead of 65% of the world's 49.7 billion women, a total of 32.3 billion individuals per the most recent data provided by World Bank Group, finding it unattractive that men engage in nerd hobbies, it's far more accurate to say that the sentiment is only held by 254 of the date psychology's female readers. Hmm. In other words, to all the men out there who are currently experiencing self doubt regarding the dating scene, um, because of years and years of such stereotypical, um, in small quotes, nerd baloney being forced upon the public consciousness, um, fear not. Not only are they full of it, but confidence in one's love of nerdy hobbies will inherently translate to confidence in oneself. And that's what women really want to see. All right, so there we go with that one. Go with that article. Now, we get into the minute, so I think we might. And before I do get into the next article here, I do need to step away from it. I do need to go off camera here for a moment, so I'll be right back before we get started on the next article here. Put some music on to entertain you guys while I'm gone. And I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Anyways, let's move on to the next article here. And again, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, with that being said, let's move along here. Voice actor Ray Porter, who played Darkseid in Zack Snyder's Justice League, becomes Superman's father, Jor-El, in new audiobook version of All-Star Superman. Article by J.D. Augustine, published today. So, few actors get to play more than one comic book character as their careers take off or gain some notoriety. However, the trend is becoming more common as DC Studios moves from a DCEU to strictly a DCU. Jason Momoa, for instance, is staying on hand to play Lobo after his initially smashing Aquaman stint, and Colin Farrell was close to playing Sergeant Rock right after turning heads as the Penguin. Then you have Ryan Reynolds and Ben Affleck playing multiple characters, including Green Lantern and Batman. But those are more well-known examples. On a small scale, you can find the same occurrence. Take Ray Porter, whose name will sound familiar to anyone who kept up with Zack Snyder's Justice League. He supplied the voice of Darkseid as the new god oversaw the mission of Steppenwolf, Sharon Hines, and witnessed his subject's defeat. That seemed like a one-and-done shot at the big time, but we haven't heard the last of Porter. Recently, he has gone from bad to good as he joined the cast of the audiobook adaptation of All-Star Superman, published by Penguin Random House Audio. Porter plays House of El patriarch and father of the last son of Krypton, Jor-El. The voice cast also includes Mark Thompson as Superman. Mark Thompson, of course, pretty well-known New York voice actor. Mark Thompson, of course, had a number of characters on the MTV series Daria back in the 90s, including, of course, Kevin Thompson, Mr. O'Neill, Anthony DiMartino. He did some anime dub voice work as well for kids and for Third Park Media. Let me see. I know he played the he played the title or roles in Shura no Toki of the Muto clan. Yakumo. Yakumo's the only one I can remember off the head there. Let's see. He was Duke Devlin in Yu-Gi-Oh! He had a number of roles in Pokemon. You can basically hear his voice all over. As Superman and Zabaro. I don't know if that's an actual. I think they meant to say Bizarro, but let's see. Kirsten C. as Lois Lane. Christopher Smith as Lex Luthor. Brandon McInnes, an LA-based voice actor, is Jimmy Olsen. Pete Bradbury as Perry White. Sean Kinnan, Elias Reyes as both Bizarro. Okay, so I guess there is a Zabaro. Bizarro and Atlas, who challenged Superman for Lois's affections. Quote, the All-Star Superman story is widely considered one of the greatest in the iconic character's history. Man of Tomorrow is an enduring DC superhero whose story has taken many forms over the years, from page to audio to screen and back again. Adapting All-Star Superman as an audiobook harkens back to his earliest years of Superman, when more than 2,000 episodes of the radio show The Adventures of Superman were broadcast from 1940 to 1951, and DC's press release. And of course, Fleischer Studios, produced a short, animated short film series of Superman from 1941 to 1943, among other things. Anyways, continuing on here. The audiobook adapts the complete 12-issue run by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely that became the basis for the well-received animated film. Structured All-Star Superman also reportedly inspired James Gunn in writing his inaugural DCU feature, which is now in theaters. This assignment could lead to bigger things on the DC horizon for Ray Porter. There's even a chance he could reprise Darkseid in the announced Mr. Miracle animated series that will bring new gods back to our screens. But nothing is official on that front yet. Even if that opportunity doesn't materialize for Porter, he posted on X in the past that he was nothing short of, quote-unquote, just grateful to be able to play Darkseid in the Snyderverse. His latest turn in the All-Star Superman audiobook is available for all ears right now. All right, so there we go with that one. I do once again need to step away from the computer, but I will be right back. I'll at least set up the last story we're going to look at tonight before I head off screen for a moment. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So let's move on to the next story here. Halfway through the show here. All right. So here's the last article we're going to go over tonight. So Saban Hasbro wanted, in smaller quotes, Power Rangers to ignore, smaller quotes, Super Sentai props and costumes they felt were too, quote unquote, silly for American audiences. Quote, there was a burger morpher in smaller quotes, Ninja Steel that we never actually used, unquote. Article by Spencer McCauley published earlier today. All right, so let's get into this article then. In giving vocal confirmation to a disappointing fact that franchise fans have long since acknowledged and begrudgingly accepted, former Power Rangers director and showrunner Simon Bennett has admitted that late series brand owners Saban and Hasbro both intentionally avoided adapting any Super Sentai elements they believed were too, in smaller quotes, silly for American audiences. Bennett, who served as the director for Saban's final three series, Power Rangers Ninja Steel, Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel, and Power Rangers Beast Morphers, before going on to serve as a showrunner for Hasbro's Power Rangers Dino Fury, Power Rangers Cosmic Fury, and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always Netflix special. Provided this insight into the American take on tokusatsu during an interview with YouTuber Keza Henshin, has recorded last year, but just recently published on July 31st. Amidst a larger discussion regarding his time in charge of the Morphin Grid, Bennett was at one point asked by his host as to whether there was anything you wanted to keep from Super Sentai, and did you think everything had to change, as well as how he went about choosing, in quote here, what to keep, to recontextualize, or even change completely. In turn, Bennett recalled, quote, there are a lot of factors involved in this, and it depends on the season, unquote. Quote, we never think we're going to keep the story from Super Sentai, unquote, he explained. Quote, it's always an original premise and story, but utilizing the design elements from Super Sentai, we look at those things and we try to invent characters that reflect what Super Sentai have already designed. That will serve the story, and we're trying to tell that we're trying to tell. And what elements we keep, it's basically the elements, in brackets, that serve the story that we want to tell are, and the ones that we keep are the ones that we keep. However, Bennett then admitted that there was one factor that would override a given element's, in quote, story relevance, unquote. And that was the fear that Super Sentai's more campy elements would be a complete miss with Power Rangers' intended American demographic. Quote, if suits or props are a bit silly in our eyes, or in Hasbro's eyes, brand's eyes, might not go down well through a U.S. lens. Then we tend to not to adapt those. For instance, there was a burger morpher, I think in Ninja Steel, in brackets, as adapted from Shuriken Sentai Ninringer, unbracketed, that we never actually used. And the camera blasters and beast morphers, in brackets, as adapted from Tokime Sentai Go Busters, unbracketed, we had to use because they appeared in footage that we were using, but they really weren't featured strongly or made as toys. And the rationale for that was that no one at Saban thought that the kids who the show was made for knew what SLR cameras look like, because everyone took pictures on their phones. Hmm. Hmm. Quote, there's very much a sense of what's going to work for the sensibilities of American kids who are the target audience of the show. And whoever owns the show, whether it's been Saban Brands or Hasbro, their brand teams have had quite strong input into what elements are going to work, or what elements they believe are going to work for their audience, as well as a tone of the show and what's going to be suitable for young kids. Unquote. To this end, Bennett then closed out his thoughts by noting that in terms of the series aforementioned quote-unquote suitability, the hurdle was the pearl-clutching nature of America's broadcast sensibilities. Quote, a lot of the Super Sentai material is considered to be too violent given the children's regulations for television. So I guess what they're saying is it sounds like they bowderized it like they did with Gatchaman back in the 70s when it became Battle of the Planets. Like, we can't have people destroying monsters execution style. Anything that looks like fire that characters are wrapped in, we have to color it so it looks like magical fire or magical explosions rather than realistic ones. We can't do penetrating injuries, although obviously for once and always, because the intended audience for that was older than the usual Power Rangers audience, we were able to take a lot more liberties with what we could show and say. Unquote. And there we go with that. So there we go with that. So we're all done with the articles. So now what we're gonna do, of course, we're gonna get right into the wrestling wrap up. We're gonna, of course, gonna look back to last night's NXT. We also have some other news to also kind of report on as well. And so on the WWE side of things, of course, they recently, with the attack that they did on Roman on Monday Night Raw, it was done to purposely write him off TV so that he could film so they can film a Marvel movie. I believe he's going to be Namor. I believe, actually no. I think he's gonna. I think he's actually. It's a. I'm sorry. I think it's a Street Fighter movie, not a Marvel movie. But he was written off TV. So um, and now coming from the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida last night, NXT. The opening match of the evening saw Kalani Jordan defeat Blake Monroe via countout. Hank and Tank Ledger and Hank Walker retained the WWE NXT Tag Team titles over Chase U of Uriah Collins and Kel Dixon. Miles Bourne defeated Lexis King. Nia Jax defeated Thea Hall. In a non-title match, Heritage Cup champion Channing Lorenzo defeated Yoshiki Inamura. And in the main event for the WWE NXT Women's North American Championship, Sol Ruka with Zari in her corner retained over Tatum Paxley, who had the culling in her corner with, of course, Izzy Dane, Shawn Spears, and Nico Vance. So now, as we look ahead, of course, to tonight's NXT, as they continue to build up towards towards Forbidden Door later on this month. Let's find something here. I'm just trying to find a quicker way to AEW here. Oh, actually, okay. Actually, here we go. On tonight's AEW comes live from the Wolstein Center in Cleveland, Ohio. Opening match sees the Death Riders, Jon Moxley, former, basically a three-time or four-time former AEW World Champion, taking on Speedball Mike Bailey. In a Forbidden Door four-way qualifier match for the AEW TBS title, Alex Windsor takes on Billy Starks. They also both take on Queen Aminata and Sky Blue. So this match, this fatal four-way, will be a qualifier to challenge for the AEW TBS title. And of course, in the Eliminator tournament, eliminate the other Eliminator tournament semifinal to see who will challenge FTR for the AEW World Tag Titles, or not or to face FTR to challenge the Hurt Syndicate for the AEW World Tag Titles. The Young Bucks of Matt and Nick Jackson will be taking on Brodito of Ring of Honor World Champion Bandito and Brody King. And also set in the main event, Mark Briscoe will be taking on MJF. So, and there is some news that came out of AEW today, as apparently there is some heat backstage on the Hurt Syndicate, most notably MVP. Apparently, they're kind of nitpicking as to who actually they're trying to demand. Well, who's going to be allowed to take the title off of them? There's also some issues between, I guess, MVP and Speedball Mike Bailey that nobody's really privy to what those issues are, apparently. So there's more, I guess, to come from that, I guess. But, of course, with that, well, of course, we'll have more for you tomorrow in regards to the results of, Dynamite, more Niche News, and all, or more of the wrestling wrap-up. Look ahead to tomorrow's Ring of Honor and TNA shows. So with that, now we'll get ready to move on to as now we've concluded the wrestling wrap up. So now what we'll do is we'll go ahead with today being Wednesday, August the 6th, 2025. Let's go ahead and take a look back at this day in Nietzsche history. History! So let me just take a look here. 85, 95. Let's see, 1965, 85, 95, 1965, 1965. All right. So with that, okay, the first thing I'd like to do, I'd actually like to wish a happy 60th birthday to Yuki Kajiria. Now, the name may not necessarily sound familiar unless, of course, you're into like anime theme songs, because Yuki Kajiria is a Japanese composer, arranger, and music producer. She has provided the music for several popular anime, including, of course, Sword Art Online, Puella, Magi, Madoka Magica, Fate Zero, The Garden of Sinners, Pandora Hearts, Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, as well as Madlax and like the Dot Hack series. Of course, she's as a composer, Kajiera is known for unique and distinctive musical motifs and motifs, as well as distinctive fusion of contemporary classical music and electronic music. Of course, she's notably part of two of anime's most well-known musical groups as Seesaw and Fiction Junction. Of course, back in 2002, Seesaw, which she was a part of, created music for the anime Dot Hack Sign. During the production series, Kaijira met Emily. Impressed by her vocals, Kaijira offered her to perform over 10 of the series songs. So, anyways, happy 60th birthday to a Japanese composer, arranger, and music producer Yuki Kajiera. Now, we do have something else from 1965, and this is usually the point when I'd say, well, 1965 is just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. But we are going to hit it twice, but in this case, it's not for a very nice reason, unfortunately. It's also on this date back in 1965. At the age of 55, Everett H. Sloan, an American character actor who also worked in radio, theater, films, and television, passed away at the age of 55. He fortunately committed suicide as he feared that he was losing his eyesight to the early on stages of coma. Now, from the animated front, the reason why we're noting this guy on the animated front, because this was the guy who provided the voice of Dick Tracy in the Dick Tracy show that aired back in 1961. So on this date, 60 years ago today, was the passing of Everett Sloan, who was known for voicing Dick Tracy, which ran in syndication on the Dick Tracy show. Of course, a cartoon adaptation, animated adaptation of Chester Gould's comic strip. Now we move ahead to the year 1985, 40 years ago today. On this date, 40 years ago today, The 120th issue of Power Man and Iron Fist went on sale on this date back in 1965. The book started out as Hero for Hire and then became Power Man. And then in its final incarnation here was Power Man and Iron Fist. It sold for 65 cents. It was 32 pages. The story was Dragon Slayer, written by James C. Owsley, penciled by Mark D. Bright, inked by Jerry Serno, with Janice Chang doing the lettering, and Juliana Fernter doing the coloring. So on this date, 40 years ago today, the 120th issue of Power Man and Iron Fist premiered. Went on sale on this date back in 2000, or 19 back on this date back in 1985. So now moving on to the last piece of niche history. Move ahead to 30 years ago today, back in 1995. On this date in 1995, WCW held its 31st Clash of the Champions on this date back in 1995 in the Ocean Center in Daytona Beach, Florida. The main event saw Vader defeat Arn Anderson and Ric Flair in a 2-on-1 handicap match during a time in which Vader, with his manager Harley Race, was feuding with the Horsemen. Harlem Heat and Sister Sherry, Booker T and Stevie Ray, with in a mixed 6-person tag match, defeated Bunkhouse Buck, Colonel Robert Parker, and Dick Slater. The Renegade, with Jimmy Hart in his corner, retained the WCW World Television title over Paul Orndorff. Diamond Dallas Page, with the Diamond Doll in his corner, defeated Alex Wright. The show opened up with Road Warrior Hawk and Sting defeating Kurosawa and Ming, with Colonel Robert Parker in their corner. So 30 years ago today, the 31st episode of Clash of Champions aired on TBS. So with that, I do thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Of course, we'll be back here with more niche news tomorrow. We'll also, also get you all caught up on all the latest in wrestling. We'll get you caught up on the results from tonight's Dynamite. Look ahead to tomorrow night's TNA Impact and Ring of Honor Club. Let's see. And also this Sunday, we'll be continuing our look at comics that went on sale from comics that went on sale in June of 1940. This Sunday, we'll be focusing in on comics that went on sale from Centaur. We'll, of course, be reading Mass Marvel #1, as well as Amazing Man Comics #15. My co-host will be Apex from Apex Comics. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. And I will see you all back here tomorrow. Bye.